Well, good evening, and it's a very bright evening here on England's Pens in our village, and so nice to be able to speak with you. And I nearly didn't get into my seat in time. I suddenly realised, I looked at the clock, I thought, oh goodness. And then of course it actually says it's showtime. And I thought, is it showtime? Well, of course, that's a moot point, isn't it? Particularly when it comes to spiritualism and the practice of mediumship and psychic work, everything to do with spiritualism, if you like, all its practices have come under the cosh since 2008, when they repealed the Fraudulent Mediums Act. And people decided that they would need to be protected by the Trades Description Act, the new trade department that was set up as a result of a European directive. And some who I would say must have been the enemies of spiritualism decided that they would scrap the Fraudulent Mediums Act, which of course when it was brought in, it replaced the Witchcraft Act of 1735, under which people were still being prosecuted, would you believe? And in the same breath as rogues and vagabonds. And Helen Duncan, bless her, she was sent to prison. Ultimately it did for her, ruined her health. And many other good mediums were prosecuted. Anyway, the Fraudulent Mediums Act came in 1951, and suddenly everybody breathed a sigh of relief, because it recognised the fact that if there are fraudulent mediums, there must be genuine mediums. Great breakthrough for spiritualism. Well, forget it. Then we got the unedifying sight and sound of mediums, perfectly respectable, genuine mediums, actually saying in spiritualist churches and meetings everywhere they went, in fact, and especially over the airwaves where they were broadcasting, everything they were doing was only for entertainment purposes only. Well, it's showtime. Well, obviously, if people go to a show, they expect to be entertained, they expect to have a good laugh. And there's nothing wrong with that, except that mediums are bringing communication through from the realms of spirit, from the realms of light, heaven, if you like. They have developed their abilities in order to attune themselves to a vaster frequency, a higher consciousness of life, so that they might actually receive transmissions from that hidden, otherwise hidden world to us, the world of spirit, the spirit dimensions. So I was not impressed by that, and I fought against it. I'm still fighting against it. And eventually, certain organisations informed their mediums and people serving their churches that they did not have to say that they were doing this for entertainment, or even that it was by way of an experiment. Of course, you can't guarantee that any medium will be able to receive communication from the world of spirit, because if the world of spirit does not want to communicate, that's your lot, as old Arthur English used to say, the English comic. Now, in spirit himself, I'm sure it was him who prompted me to say that. But the point is this, that there are all manner of communications given by, and that is the dogs being told where to get off by Kathy, and very spiritually, of course. And the point is that there are all different kinds of presentations of mediumship, and what people like particularly to prove that there is life after death, life after this life, are messages, communications from their loved ones who are now in spirit, who were down here, and that they have lost in a physical sense. And many and various and different are the ways in which these messages are delivered, received. I suppose, if you like, there's only one way of receiving them, but a million different ways of actually sort of transmitting them and channeling them through. And I have taught many mediums to develop their abilities, and I have always taught psychic practices as well, because where we may argue that that does not prove survival after physical death, it does prove that there is far more to this life than might otherwise be thought. You know, it's one in the eye, if you like, for the skeptic, because we all have a sixth sense, that ESP. It's actually part of our makeup, it's part of ourselves, it's part of what we need to actually survive in this physical life. We need to have that extra ability. And whether you want to say that it's generated by hormonal activity, glandular activity, or if it's just programmed into the animality of us, you know, that's all up for consideration. However, what we know as spiritualists is that we are all spirit within ourselves. We connect with that spirit without, and we connect in that way to the great spirit, God, you know, the great creator, whatever you want to call that amazing first cause, least understood, is up to you, whichever religious organization or grouping you belong to, or even if you don't belong to any. Now, you know, the world has split itself up into all sorts of religious groupings, and they seem to have made that a good excuse to go to war against each other on various occasions in the past. And the past really should stay in the past. You know, one of the principles of spiritualism that is universally accepted by all spiritualists is spiritual progress is open to every human soul. And spiritual progress is to be made here on the earth plane, because, you know, don't forget that wonderful prayer, on earth as it is in heaven. We are trying to make a heaven on earth, a wonderful, perfect place in which to live. And you know, this is our aim. And if we trail the past behind us and forever relive those terrible times past, how are we going to make any progress? And that spiritual progress is so important to try very hard to make that happen here and now. And of course, we must learn from those past mistakes, and we must look back and we must consider them, and we must look to see particularly how those mistakes have happened, how those persecutions and those terrible times actually, you know, manifest themselves, and how they came into being, and to change things so that it doesn't happen again. So that's my thinking on that. And of course, communications from the world of spirit is how spiritualism itself started back in the 19th century. And it was proved thereafter by people developing their mediumship, like those first mediums, and getting those messages and communications through from spirit. Now, a lot of those communications were made using spirit operators on the other side, moving tables around, trumpets, bells, all sorts of things, demonstrating that there is indeed more to life than this physical life, and the understandings of science as we know it. I mean, when you think that in the 19th century, their science wasn't as advanced, as progressed as it is now. And they certainly didn't know about quantum physics. And we know now that a lot of the principles of involved in quantum physics are directly applicable to what we understand as the phenomena, the scientific phenomena of spiritualism itself. This gives rise to our philosophy and our religious belief system, because spiritualism is a religious belief system. And whether you think it's a standalone religion, or whether you find that, your own religion, your own basic religion should be blended in with that, part of that, no problem. Well, not for spiritualists anyway. So my society is called the New Christian Spiritualist Society. It started off as a New Spiritualist Society, and we decided that we would put in the word Christian because it would be hypocritical not to, because the vast majority of people who were joining us and who were following our ideas were indeed Christian. And we like to think very much that we are like the early Christians who followed the teacher and prophet Jesus, and we try to live by his teachings and example. And as they did, following the spiritual way that he laid out before them. And this was long before the Christian religion got organised amongst itself and decided to have a go at other religions, and the religion itself, of Christianity, split itself up, and they became warring factions. And in fact, in the country where I sit now, in England, terrible horrors were perpetrated on people who were different sections of Christianity. So basically, Christians were burning Christians at the stake. They were performing all sorts of dreadful tortures, and even when it came to the sacred texts themselves, the Holy Bible, the fact that it was translated into the native language was cause to send people to the stake and the gallows. So there we are, you see, and the past really should remain where it is. I don't think we should bring their arguments forward and use them today against our fellow human beings. I think that the spirit of tolerance, mercy and love should actually be encouraged upon this earth. And also, of course, when we're talking about animals too, and looking after their interests and understanding that they are sentient beings with a spirit, maybe a simple spirit. At one time I used to do readings for animals. I used to do aura pictures, and I did aura pictures for human beings, of course. But then I used to go to people's houses and do aura readings of their animals for them. And that, I used to enjoy that very much. And then I even did that by post for a while. People would send me pictures of their animals, and I would link into spirit, and I would get a vision of their own spirit within themselves and paint that. So it looked like a sort of an aura painting, but of course it was really their spirit within. And I know that the animal spirits were very simple compared to our human ones. So therefore, we are blessed. We are blessed with this higher intelligence. Let us use it for the good of the world, for the good of our fellow human beings, and for the good of our fellow creatures. There. So that's my little chat about that. I should look to see if we have friends. Oh, good evening, Nicola and Andrew. Where's Andrew gone? Andrew, good evening to you. And Samantha, good evening. And Todd, amen. Good evening to you. And, I was talking about these broadcasts to my Right Reverend Nick Brown, who is actually my suffragan, you should say, my suffragan bishop. And he does some wonderful work himself. And I was saying to him about this series of talks that I've been giving over the last few days. And I said to him, I think that mostly the same people are attending. It's almost like conducting a circle. And of course, Reverend Nick was a newcomer to my circle. 22 years ago. And it gives one such a lovely feeling because we're all connected, and that love connects all of us. And I know that we all receive healing and comfort through that connection. So there are all our loved ones who gather round at this time, as they ever do, in a circle where lots of people are gathered. And in fact, Jesus, it was, tried to explain those kinds of things in simple terms. And don't forget, this was 2,000 years ago, before anybody even had an aspirin to help their headache, or an electric light, or anything that we take for granted so often now. Even anaesthetics and medicines and things like that. And he said, wherever 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, there I shall be also. And when he was going to be killed, he actually said to his followers then, when I go to the other side of life, I will be able to do more for everybody than I can do now, because I'm going to come back as the Comforter, the Holy Spirit. And of course, this is exactly what has happened, and we are able to understand that enormous love, enveloping love of the Spirit, of the Holy Spirit, and we understand, particularly as spiritualists, what he was talking about. So, as I mentioned, our particular society accepts that Jesus has been the light of the world, and it's so sad that people who call themselves Christian can't wait to heap calumny and have a go at other people who are Christians, and then they have a go at people who are not avowed Christians, who are people of other cultures and creeds, and they want to persecute them. The Jews are a very good case. For 2,000 years, well, just under 2,000, because for the first, sort of, shall we say, 300 years or so, the Jews were basically mostly Christian anyway, followers of Jesus. And the Gentiles who were not Jews, who were also followers of Jesus, seemed to meld quite nicely with them, with their fellow spiritual travellers on this earth plane. But unfortunately, it was decided that the Jews as a people were responsible for the death of Jesus. The fact that if he hadn't have died, Christianity wouldn't have come into being, and even Jesus himself could have escaped. He could have escaped that fate, but he didn't want to, because he'd been told by, as he said, his Father in heaven, this is what he had to do. And even when he said, take this bitter cup away from me, dear Father, that wasn't going to happen. He knew it wasn't going to happen, and he had to go to his death. So you could say, in fact, you could turn that around and say that the Jews should be praised if you were going to blame them as a people. But how can you blame one race of people, one tribe of people, for something that happened that you have no actual solid recording of 2,000 years ago, and start massacring them in the 20th century, and even having a go at them in the 21st century? This does not compute, does it? If you actually think about it sensibly, as human beings, we should consider our position as human beings, as spirit within ourselves, and linking in to all those spirit who are without, and the Great Spirit, and know that we are all children of the one God. And it'll behoves us to persecute and terrorize other groups of people because we have decided, or somebody has decided and told us that this is what we should think, that they should be persecuted and killed off because they actually follow a different pathway towards the one great spirit. So anyway, there you are. Now, tonight we're going to see again how we can get messages, spiritual messages for ourselves Now, you'll have to excuse me. I need to take a drop of tea. Thank you for excusing that. And you'll see that now, yesterday, I spoke about Harry Wedge's Spiritualist hymn book. He was the organist, you remember, for a couple of churches up north, as we call it, and how it came into my possession. And you can see that on a previous video if you'd like to actually look at that. And here is my little hymn book that I took with me when I went to Israel and to America, and used that for my own little messages. And here we have, this is called the Little Blue Hymn Book, which was compiled, as you'll see, by Reverend Nick Brown, and it has articles by myself in it, talking about, of course, I have to, you can't just have a hymn book with me. You have to have articles talking about things like to sing or not to sing. That is the question. So that's the case for singing hymns or not singing hymns. Lots of people like popular songs now that they choose. And I've got there's the 7 principles of mediumship. Ooh, that's my idea of what constitutes mediumship, and where to find genuine mediums, and sort of lots of different things. Welcome to the new Spiritualist Society, and so on and so forth. Anyway, the fact is this, that I thought that tonight we will get messages from this book, which you can get from Amazon, of course, in the same way. I ought to mention, they're telling me upstairs that I ought to mention the Spiritualist handbook, which has got loads and loads of stuff in it. If you get fed up with me chatting away, you can actually buy the book and then look at little chunks of it when you feel like it. And I guess you could always turn me off or press fast forward or backward or whatever. So I'm going to change my glasses, and I'm going to show you, yet again, you'll have to bear with me because, Susan, there we are. Good evening, and just before I start, Tammy, good evening, because I'm going to show you how you can get spiritual comfort, encouragement and upliftment for yourself in times of trouble and stress. I mean, you don't have to be troubled and stressed to get yourself a message from one of these hymn books, but it is it's better than bandages. Okay, it's wonderful. You can just ask. What you do, it's still the same people. It's still your loved ones. They're the first people, if you like. It's like a little relay station. You get your loved ones. You get if your parents are on the other side, or your aunties, uncles, grandparents, great-grandparents, people who love you on the other side of life, in those spirit dimensions. They come close to you at times when you are troubled and stressed, or when you need some upliftment. And what happens is they are then joined by those of perhaps you might call more lofty spiritualities on the other side. They've sort of progressed. We'll talk about spiritual progress, won't we? Progressed more and have access to those higher realms where the love of the Almighty actually comes through, and they gather close, and they can actually prompt what goes on. If you don't believe me now, this one will be, you remember I was saying the initials, and today we're going to do PQRST. Now, if you have a first name, middle name, any kind of middle names, or a last name that starts with those initials, do have a listen, because them on the other side know, and they know your people, and they will give you something that is appropriate for you. Now, P. You just open up and you look in, and I have got Amazing Grace. How sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear, the hour I first believed. Through many dangers, toils and snares I have already come. Its grace hath brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. The Lord has promised good to me. His word my hope secures. He will my shield and portion be, as long as life endures. Yes, when this flesh and heart shall fail, and mortal life shall cease, I shall possess within the veil a life of joy and peace. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun. And speaking of spiritual progress, that was written by a one-time slave trader, John Newton. He saw the light. He saw the light. He was able to make spiritual progress on this earth plane, and he gave up his slaving. He was a captain of a slave ship, and he gave that up and took holy orders, and he wrote that song there. So that was specially for you with the initial P. And now Q, which is not quite Q-U-I-T-E, as common in names in England, but we know that Q is used where it's translated into the Roman alphabet, which we use, the English alphabet. So this is for you if you have a name with Q as an initial. And I will read for you a couple of verses. And here we've got this. The Lord my God, he shines a light to guide you in the lonely night, to keep you safe on troubled road, gives help when asked to share the load. The one on high, he shines for peace, will cause all pain and fear to cease, to soothe the aching, furrowed brow. His kindness heals, and the time is now. That was a lovely message for you. I hope that you liked that. Now, moving quickly on. If you have the initial name R, and don't forget, even though we're asking at this time for particular initial names, that all of us can take comfort from such verses when they're given to us, because we know that all our loved ones gather round at this time, not just for the 5 people whose initials we are speaking at the moment, but for all of us. And please take comfort from them. And here we are, and this is for, I should really mark it off because being a bit old and doddery. Now, this one is for you. R. Round the corner of the world I turn, more and more about the world I learn. All the new things that I see, you'll be looking at along with me. And it's from the old I travel to the new. Keep me travelling along with you. As I travel through the bad and good, keep me travelling the way I should. Where I see no way to go, you'll be telling me the way I know. And it's from the old I travel to the new. Keep me travelling along with you. There. I hope you enjoyed that. I think that they're listening to everything that we're saying here, and they're listening to what you're thinking. So that's R. That was R. Now we come on to S. Oh, Susan. Here we are. Susan, I think. There we are. So S and S, you've got lots of S's there, and I shall give you this, which just fell open. This is one of my favourites, which I am giving to you now if you have the initials S in your first, middle or last names. I come to the garden alone, while the dew is still on the roses, and a voice I hear falling on my ear, the Son of God discloses, and he walks with me, and he talks with me, and he tells me I am his own, and the joy we share as we tarry there, no other has ever known. He speaks, and the sound of his voice is so sweet, the birds hush their singing, and the melody that he gave to me within my heart is ringing. I'd stay in the garden with him, though the night around me be falling, but he bids me go. Through the voice of woe, his voice to me is calling. And he walks with me, and he talks with me, and he tells me I am his own, and the joy we share as we tarry there, none other has ever known. There, sometimes we feel that the joy that we get from sweet commune with our loved ones on this other side of life and with the Lord himself is just an unspeakable joy. And we can't imagine that anybody else has felt that. And of course, I suppose it's just like being ordinarily in love. You feel that nobody else has ever felt like that in their whole lives. What a lovely feeling. So there we are. I hope, Suzanne, that you enjoyed that. Now we come to tea. And of course, look, Todd. You know, sometimes people are chosen, aren't they? And you are T as well. Wow, there we are. Now I wonder what we're going to be given. I wonder what we're going to be given for you. Right. So important, isn't it? But this is what you can do. All you have to do is you get hold of a book and you just ask. And I'm saying, dear Lord, please give me a message that's suitable. And here we get it. It's the same one that I had before. I see. What they're telling me is that that's why they stopped me when I'd only read 2 verses. And I wondered at the time, I thought, why am I being stopped at 2 verses? Well, now we know why, because here come the last 2 verses. And the first verse they're saying, all right. One more step, along the world I go. One more step, along the world I go. From the old things to the new. Keep me travelling along with you. Give me courage when the world is rough. Keep me loving, though the world is tough. Leap and sing in all I do. Keep me travelling along with you. You are older than the world can be. You are younger than the life in me. Ever old and ever new. Keep me travelling along with you. And it's from the old I travel to the new. Keep me travelling along with you. God bless you. There. Wow. I hope that helped, because, you know, you need to know that you are loved, that those who love you, who are now in the world of spirit, want you to feel comforted and encouraged, and they want you to be healed. And I know that healing will take place, that comforting will take place, that encouragement will happen. You will feel encouraged. You know, you will get that second wind. as we used to call it. You know, you know, when you're endeavouring to do your best in life, it's very easy also to feel that you're not getting very far or you have too many obstacles. But with help, with that kind of spirit help, with spiritual help, you can do anything and you can overcome any problems. Really, you can. And I'm sitting here today, I've overcome a few, not on my own. I could not do anything on my own. And the same as sitting here chatting with you this evening. You know, we've had lots of things to do today. We've had the local magazine, which we produced together with a team of us, put it together, and it was delivered yesterday. It all had to be sorted out. Over 4,000 copies of the magazine for the village community in which we live. So we worked at producing all of that, and then because of this situation with the lockdown and social distancing and so on, our usual depot could not handle the delivery and the distribution. We've had to do it, so we've been doing it from our porch today. If anyone's interested, they can see it on my Facebook page. A few pictures from that. So I hope that you enjoyed. Now, there's a story to that. Do you know, I used to sing down the Two Eyes, which was the old rock and roll coffee bar in the late 50s, early 60s, and where Tommy Steele and everybody else used to sing. And I sang down there with a group called the African People. No no prizes for finding out where they came from or what colour their skin was. And wonderful group called the African People, and I was their lead singer. And they used to make me learn the words of the most extremely difficult songs. So you know, a baptism of fire there down the Two Eyes coffee bar, which was only a tiny little cellar underneath the coffee bar itself. And yes, I was down there with all the rock and rollers, and we used to knock around together, and it was great fun. And I was great mates with Ginger Baker and the rest of them before they decided to become Cream. And I even sang with them in clubs, like one called The Scene in Ham Yard. And I remember meeting Johnny Duncan and his Bluegrass Boys down there, and Paul McCartney. And that's what we used to do, hang out together. But I don't think my voice was very good. So there you are. So you must be psychic and sing about singing. I try not to sing too much in public. Todd, oh, thank you for the readings. Oh dear, yes, you're so welcome. I just love doing this work. It was the ice that brought me into it, as most people know. I was an ice speed skater, later an ice hockey player, and I also skated up here on the Fens, of course. It's a wonderful place, the birthplace, in fact, of ice speed and bandy, with which I'm very much involved. Please go to my Facebook page, which is Great Britain Bandy Association, if you want to find out about that, or the website, GB Bandy. Have a look for that, Google it if you will, and see lots of stuff on there. So I digress. I wanted to mention about Psychic World. That's the paper that I write for every month. I still keep my hand in with writing spiritual stuff. And here's the front page. And Jean she was my friend too. She's past the spirit herself now. She was a wonderful medium, transfiguration medium and trance medium. She was fantastic, and I spoke about her actually in my book, telling people how she actually brought my mother through, and it was quite extraordinary experience for me. So there you are. That's the paper. It's loads of pages, lots of interesting articles and things in it for the thinking person. And you can subscribe. You said I'll hold this up because then I believe what you can do is actually stop the thing and read what it says. But actually, I think you can see the address on that. I hope. Maybe not. Oh well. Anyway, it's please send to Psychic World, PN Box PW Box 14, PN Psychic News, which is of course what I used to be editor of. Psychic World, Box PO Box 14, Greenford, Middlesex. Uniform Bravo 6. I think that's a 0. Uniform Foxtrot. There we are. And send them a cheque for £15 for a year, and that's including post and packing. You get 12 issues of paper, £20 if you're overseas, and it's just wonderful. And Candy Taylor is the publishing editor of that, and she's the daughter of my old friend Ray Taylor, who was a wonderful spiritualist pioneer. And I don't bore you with all the details because there's so many wonderful. Oh, Todd, I'll put that up if you don't mind, Todd, to show you. Oh, it won't go up for some reason. Sorry, but Todd Cossart is saying that he looks forward to getting his copy in the States every month. Oh, there. Oh, that's wonderful. I'm sure that you'll really enjoy it because it has lots and lots. And in fact, there's also, contributions from America too. Yes. So there we are. I hope that you've enjoyed being with me at this time. And I think we've been speaking together for about 45 minutes, and I don't know how they do that because Kathy, bless her, she's hoping to watch her team tonight on television, and the kickoff is at 8:15 British Summer Time, which is 2015, of course. Once upon a time, I missed my plane out of South Africa because I thought that 2015 was actually 10 o'clock, and it wasn't. When I turned up at the airport, everybody was there waiting to wave me off. I think they were quite pleased to see the back of me after I'd put them through their paces for 3 weeks, coaching them the speed skating out there. And I'd missed the plane, so I stayed on another week, which I enjoyed. I don't know if they enjoyed it so much. Anyway, I shall say God bless you. The next time we speak, it will be readings, special readings for UVWXYZ, because it's been 5 UVWX 2, 3, 4 Y, and said we'll complete our alphabetic giving of spiritual nourishment. So God bless you. Keep you safe. May you feel happiness, joy, that your loved ones are caring for you and are able to make their presence felt in your lives. Look for the signs that you get. Don't dismiss things as just, oh, that's just a coincidence, or, oh, that's nothing. I was standing in our bedroom on my own, and I thought Kathy had walked in and touched me on the back. And when I looked around, there was nobody there. Wow, I thought. This was just as I was getting ready to come and speak with you. So you see, just look for that. Be open to that. And the next time, something unexpectedly nice happens, or you catch a glimpse of something that reminds you of a loved one, go with it, accept that, and thank God. So I say, God bless you and yours, keep you safe. Bye for now.